Welcome back, friends. So in this video, we are going to see some solutions. We'll start with the first one. So we need to create a function called subtraction. Now, as you know, we can define this function in two different ways. And for this function, I'm just going to make a function declaration. So I say function subtraction. And then this function is going to take two arguments. And I'll call them x and y. And what I want to do here is return y minus x. Okay. Right? So simple as that, right? Now, by the way, I do want to draw your attention to a particular point. The order of arguments are important. I think we played around just a little bit back in the BMI example. But I want to show you something. Let's call this function down here. I'll say subtraction. And as a subtrahend, because you know that our first argument is subtrahend, and for that I say 18. And as a second argument, which is descending, I say 97. Okay? Now this function is going to return a value to us, and I want to store that value in a variable. So right here, I say var result. And then later on, we'll need to console log this result. So down here, I say console.log and result. So I can save all that and go back to the console and refresh this. And yeah, so we see our result in the console. Now, here's where I want to show you something different. So here in the console, we can reach out to our subtraction function. And why is that? Well, because we load our script.js file to this HTML file. So when I open console in this HTML page, I can reach out to the whole functions in this very specific console. So let me show you what I mean. Give it a try with me. I'll say subtraction in the console, and as the first argument, which is subtrahend, because we set it like that in our function, I'll say 834. As a second argument, I'll say 9012. And when we call this function, we see a result immediately in the console. All right, so let's go back to the code. And here we're going to look at our second question. So first up, we are going to create a function called isOdd. Now this time I'm going to make a function expression. So I say var isOdd, and this is going to be a function. So I say function. And this function is going to take one argument, and I'll call that number. And then we want to return true if the number is odd. Return false otherwise. So of course there's a few different ways of doing this. The first one is to just do it explicitly as possible, right? So we're going to say if number mod 2 is not equal to 0, remember that's how we tell if something's even or odd. So if the remainder of dividing 2 into that number is 0, if there is no remainder, that means that it's even, and if the remainder is not 0, then our number is odd. So if that's the case, then we can return true, else return false. All right, so far so good, just like that. Now down in here, I want to call this function, so I say isOdd, and parenthesis and 5. And I want to console log what this function returns to us, right? So I'll say console.log, and inside of it, copy and paste this function call. So I save this and go to my console, and sure enough, here we see our true value. And yes, 5 is an odd number, isn't that right? And let's make another example here in the console. So I call isOdd with 4, and yeah, it returns to us false. Okay, so that's working. Now, again, I'll call isOdd with 87, and sure enough, we see it to be true. So next up, we have a sum up operation. And I'm going to make another function expression. I say var, and we need to call this function addition, and this is going to be a function. So we know we need to take a number as an argument. And I call that argument as a number, okay? Then whatever number I write here, I want to sum up all numbers from 1 to that number, which is given as an argument to this function. Okay, so great concept, but how do I do that? Now, in order to be able to do that, I'm going to define a variable inside the function. So I say var res and set it to be equal to 0. Now, I'm going to look at all the numbers from 1 to that argument and add them to the res. You know, that's result, right? And to do that, I'm going to write a for loop. So I say for var I equal to 1. And now here comes our condition. I want this for loop to continue this until I is less than or equal to the number, which is our argument. And then we're going to add 1 every time to the I. All right? All right, cool. So let's, right now, look at all the numbers from 1 to that argument. Okay. Now what I want to do is add all the numbers to the res variable. So inside the for loop, I'll say res equal to res plus I. So now what we're doing here is adding all numbers to the res inside the for loop. And after that, after our loop is done, right, out of the loop, inside the function, we're going to return the res variable. So if we take this step by step, if we did it for 4, result starts 0 right here. Then we're creating I, start says 1, and we sum up result by I. So that's just 0 plus 1. So the first time through, we just add 1 to res, so we get 1. Next time through, I is now 2 because we added 1. So that is still less than the number, which is 4. So we add it again, res equals the res, which is 1 at the moment. Then we add 2. So then we've got 3. And it continues so on, just like that. So that's really all we need to do there. Now, in order to test this out, I'm just going to call this function with 3. And I'll create a variable to store the result, say var add result addition 3. Okay, so now when we sum up 1, 2, 3, we need to see 6, right? Now, to see that, I'll say console.log and add result. I'll save this, go to the browser. And yeah, here we see our result. And in our console, I want to show you another example. I'll call addition with 4, and we see 10. And sure enough, that is correct. So now let's call an addition with a bigger number. Let's say 200. And down here, we see our result. Okay. So those are the solutions. I hope you got there on your own. Otherwise, you probably learned or picked up a couple of tricks right here in the solutions. Very cool. So we are going to pause right here, and then we're going to continue in the next section.